Aye, what is going on with y'all, man? It is Black Balloon, and I'm coming back with another video, so y'all already know what's going on. Alright, y'all. We are back with the part 2. We're gonna go over another clip of the Candace Owens interview, and we're also gonna listen to Judge Joe Brown talk about Kamala Harris as well. Y'all put me on in the comments that Judge Joe Brown has, basically put a tear into Kamala Harris as well, and he's been very vocal about her. Now, y'all gotta give me a little break. I wasn't really paying attention much to Judge Joe Brown or a lot of this talk about Kamala Harris, as politics is something I don't really get into that much, right? But now I'm going down the rabbit hole, and a lot of this stuff is very interesting, and it's really piquing my interest, right? Some of the stuff I'm not surprised at, what I'm hearing. I definitely want to play the clip from Judge Joe Brown because he just went off. I didn't hear him. I think I saw that interview from the Art of Dialogue's page come across my channel, but I never clicked and watched it. But man, did he go off. Y'all put me on in the comments, so I had to go check out Judge Joe Brown and what he's been talking about, right? So we're going to check that out toward the end of this video. But I got another clip from that same interview that I really want y'all to hear. I didn't want to put it in part 1 because I just didn't want to bombard y'all with the information, just kind of separate it so we can just break it down, right? And I found something that was very interesting that relates back to the Beatles and MK Ultra mind control. Y'all gonna find this article to be very interesting. It was something I had, because I listened to the interview twice. I had to go back and pay attention a little bit more to what the journalist was saying, because sometimes you can't really hear what he's saying. There's one part I heard him say something about the Beatles and one of their albums being strictly about mind control, right? I found this article from Time magazine, and man, does it connect everything. And we're going to get into that article. But first, I'm going to play y'all the clip from the Candace Owens interview. And trust me, I did see a lot of the comments where y'all definitely have y'all opinions about Candace Owens, like in a sense relating her to Alex Jones, so on and so on. But y'all know me, I'm more focused on the message. A lot of this stuff is ringing to be true regardless of the messenger. So look, without me talking too much in this intro, y'all, we'll get right back into that interview. I wanted to go ahead and get this video out probably before the election. So yeah, man, look, check this out.
I do want to shift gears and talk about her mother, because I was quite stunned by your assertion that she was involved in the MK Ultra program, and yet that to me seemed to be the only thing that made sense, because she seemed to be sort of infiltrating the civil rights movement. And I'm going, what is this alleged brilliant scientist doing, constantly involving herself in civil rights protests and making friends with these individuals? And because I'm well read on the MK Ultra program, I recognize the connection there. Can you speak about what she did, or what you are alleging she did? Yeah.
Well, the first place, you got to understand that the Pollen clan, they were like clerks, judges, spies for the British when India was a British colony. And Miss Pollen was born when it was still a British colony. So the rest of the country was up in arms fighting against the British, but they were very, very loyal to the British intelligence service and police service in India. So this is how they all got ahead, by catering to the British. And that enabled Shyamala Gopalan, when she was, after she got her degree in Madras, India, to enter UC Berkeley, which is not the cheapest school in the universe, nor is California a really inexpensive place to go. It's one of the most expensive places. I know. I went to school there. It's very expensive there. She worked at the monkey lab there. She was into it's a real strange combination of psychology, and simian studies and zoology. Okay, and she was an expert, training monkeys and all that. And Madras is an area, her hometown, where there's a lot of monkeys running around the Hindu temples and all that. And so she's very familiar and very good with them. And she developed the theory and this was a time of Jane Goodall. There's a huge boom of women who work with apes. Okay, there were ape programs set up all across the United States and England and Europe out of excitement of the Goodall story, news stories. And Goodall were treating apes, the monkey children, as sort of like human children, and getting some very, very good responses of taming them. Mm-hmm. So she was of that school. Now, what happened while she was at UC Berkeley? After she got her degree, she moved out of Berkeley and took her 2 kids and divorced her husband, this guy Harris, Donald Harris, who was, at the time he was in biology, then he went into law. Divorced him and moved to San Francisco and did nothing for 2 years. She waited 2 years while her application was in to a hospital in Montreal. So this was the Jewish hospital in Montreal, okay, that she applied to.
Yes, that's where she eventually did work. Yeah, she was eventually employed there.
Process, because they had to check all your background, everything, every little detail about her. And this is because the very famous psychiatrist who really got the MK Ultra program going, Ewan Cameron. He was a Scottish guy, a pedophile, and he was a torturer. He used all sorts of drugs on victims of that program. He passed away, and there was like about 7 to 8 year hiatus where his program was shut down because there was no one in charge, and they had to move the program because Congress. There was a secret, not so secret. There was an investigation in Congress about MK Ultra, so the heat was on the Canadians. The Ewan Cameron's lab was in Montreal. Okay, so there was the heat was on the Canadians to fess up, so they shut that lab down. There's an infamous Allen lab, and then they wanted to set up another center, also connected to the University of McGill University there in Montreal. They had to have that certification. And in the meanwhile, they were trying to find the new director to take over from them. And she finally got the call. They brought her over. They set her up at another one at the Jewish Hospital Annex. And she took charge of the monkey, not only the monkey lab, she took charge of the patient care ward. Oh, wow. It was a small patient care ward because that hospital, Jewish Memorial, had a psychiatric clinic also. So she worked as a psychiatrist there in a very small division, which became the Center for the Revived MK Ultra program.
I was under the impression that it was Dr. Sidney Gottlieb who...
No.
Okay.
Sidney Gottlieb was a gopher. He was applied. He wasn't into research.
Okay.
He just applied everything Cameron had developed.
Okay.
Use of drugs, hypnotism, light deprivation, all of those nasty techniques to destroy a human willpower.
Wow.
Capture their brain. Gottlieb is a famous one, and everyone thinks MK Ultra was basically American technique. No, it came out of London. It came out of the Tavistock Institute of Sigmund Freud.
Yes.
World War II.
I am just so shocked that you are bringing this up because I got into a lot of trouble with the media for discussing Sigmund Freud at length, and I've been doing it on this podcast. It's super important for people to learn the truth about him, that he was a person who created a method of psychology essentially to gaslight people who were in fact being molested by their own parents, and that that's why he was obsessed with children and sex. And it's shocking that we learned that he's a hero in psychology. And it's just very important for people to learn the truth about him because psychology is then, his family is then what bred propaganda. That would be the Bernays family and Edward Bernays. And you are correct. This all fits right into the MK Ultra program, which was designed to see how you could break down someone's will, how you could hypnotize them, we spoke at length on this show about how the Charles Manson murders, that was actually the CIA, and everything that the public thinks they know about that. Same areas you're talking about, San Francisco, California. These are federal agents that were obsessed with learning how to hypnotize the public, how to destroy people's will. And a big part of that was molestation. And Sigmund Freud had, in fact, written pieces about how, molesting someone when they are a child, sodomizing, they were interested in exploring how they could create psychopaths. That's also another element of these programs and psychology. And I think it's hard for people to come to terms with how evil that is. And you're now saying that Shamala got the call and she then took a part in this program of testing patients.
Military intelligence created this.
Wow.
The brainwashing techniques they developed obviously massively during World War II because they tried to use that against the enemy, German allies, and so on, and reluctant the German enemy, and also against reluctant allies. They tried to use mind control techniques. But after the war, I think it was in the late 1940s, so 1940s. Between 1946 and 1948, the British military created the Tavistock Institute, which is on Tavistock Square in London. Sigmund Freud himself flew over from Switzerland to London to cut the opening ribbon. And then he assigned one of his sons to be the director of the place. He was right behind. He was the main psychiatrist in the family.
Yes, I'm familiar with Tavistock. There is also some indication that even the Beatles and music has come out of Tavistock University and how it could transform, modifying human behavior.
Now, that's exactly what we were talking about in the video with Allie Carter, how the CIA and the government were interested in how they can create psychopaths. Remember, we were talking about Jeffrey Dahmer. We were talking about the Zodiac Killer. We were talking about all of these serial Ks that committed so many murders that, it just seemed like it was orchestrated somehow, and they bring up Charles Manson, which we also talked about being connected to the CIA in, San Francisco, Los Angeles. They're talking about Montreal in Canada. When you think about Colorado and all of the psyops, mass studies on human reactions that have came out of Colorado. Just look it up when we're talking about mass shootings. So much stuff has came out of Colorado, y'all. It does not make any sense. Aurora, Colorado. That's another place where it just seems like maybe there's a base there for the CIA or some kind of MK Ultra program that is in Colorado, because so much stuff happens there. I know that doesn't really have anything to do with this video, but it makes sense, with what they were talking about as far as these places where a lot of this research is done, especially on the West Coast going toward Canada, California, so on and so on, right? Another thing that was very interesting about that clip is the entire back history of how Kamala Harris's mom, actually became a psychiatrist for what was a rebooted program of MK Ultra at the hospital that she waited 2 years to work for. The story is just really deep. It's really deep, and it really shows the history of Kamala Harris's family, especially her mom, being involved in the program. I think a lot of this stuff really, really gets into the thick of, things that were going on for a long time now to get people into positions where they are. Although from what we've been finding out, Kamala Harris had to do certain things on her own, but man, did her mom play a major role in, who she is today, and their family being connected to the cabal, to the CIA, to MK Ultra, to all kinds of people. All of these top scientists who ran and started MK Ultra, the piece where they were talking about Sigmund Freud, a lot of that stuff, it's mind-blowing, in a sense. And it's very interesting to expose and learn about. You know, like I was saying in the beginning of this video, how some of this stuff connects to other things that just makes it all come back full circle, right? And especially when he mentioned the Beatles. Now, y'all already know when something like has to do with music or, it just connects to another topic that we've discussed on this channel, we have to go down the rabbit hole, right? Really quick, we're going to get through this article, okay? It says, half a century ago, when the Beatles album Revolver was released on August 5th, 1966 in the UK, John Lennon ended the last song on the record with a lyrical message best understood by a certain subset of listener. Quote, so play the game, existence, to the end of the beginning of the beginning. That song, Tomorrow Never Knows, was quoting from the psychedelic experience written by psychedelic researchers Timothy Leary, Ralph Messner, and Richard Alpert. Fittingly, the album dropped during a summer when it would seem that many of music's biggest influencers were questioning the game of existence, with one ingredient in particular, LSD. Now we can get a little back history, since LSD was basically what started the research for MK Ultra. This article provides us a little bit of history on that, right? So it says the Beach Boys had just brought out what some consider to be the first mainstream psychedelic rock albums, Pet Sounds. A year ahead of the Summer of Love, hippies were beginning to migrate to its epicenter, San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury, where America's first head shop, the Psychedelic Shop on Hyatt Street, had opened that year. Time magazine devoted an essay to the topic, reporting that tens of thousands of college students had tried the drug. Then this article goes on to say that the Beatles didn't sing about LSD on Revolver, which Rising says the first album recorded after each of the Beatles had tried the drug. Revolver taught us how to think about things, adding that perhaps the Beatles gave the drug a certain celebrity appeal. But was 1966 the year the LSD story began? Not quite. In fact, Revolver represents more of a turning point than a beginning, as the drug crossed from the research world to the recreational. Before it was about turning on, tuning in, and dropping out, LSD was leading to explosive research among psychologists, psychiatrists, and pharmacologists, many of whom believed they had found a miracle drug. David Nichols, a pharmacologist and researcher in the field of psychedelics, remains interested in finding out whether any positive effects that could be brought by LSD use, and he tells Time that he considers it to be widely a misunderstood drug. As he tells it, pharmacology would be a lot different if LSD hadn't been discovered by Swiss scientist Albert Hofmann in 1943, when the famed researcher accidentally absorbed one of his earlier discovered lysergic acid compounds, LSD-25, through his fingertips. He then describes seeing an uninterrupted stream of fantastic pictures, shapes, and colors. Dr. Warner Stoll, the son of Arthur Stoll, president of pharmaceutical company Sandoz, where LSD was first synthesized by Hoffman, became the first to research acid in a psychiatric environment, and reported that low doses of LSD could surface a patient's repressed memories and produce a model psychosis, or a temporary display of symptoms similar to those experienced by a person diagnosed with schizophrenia. They said that was later to be untrue, but I don't believe that. With those findings, Sandoz began marketing LSD and began sending it to laboratories across the world for research purposes. Soon after, LSD research was sponsored by the then secret CIA project MK Ultra, which investigated acid as a tool for interrogation and mind control. Meanwhile, scientists researched the drug's effects on alcoholism, psychotherapy, consciousness, and creativity. Nichols believes that LSD research led to the first formal recognition that brain chemistry could affect behavior, which in turn led to landmark research into schizophrenia and depression. So that, y'all, I thought was very interesting as it relates back to the Beatles, because we know the Beatles were used as puppets. You know, a lot of their music was done in which language, and it does not surprise me that, they all were on LSD at one point, and, LSD being the main drug that was researched to start MK Ultra. And it's just crazy how a lot of this stuff connects, and all ties back to one thing, you know, almost in a sense, one entity, and it all has the same goal, right? So with that being said, y'all, look, we'll go ahead and jump into the clip with Judge Joe Brown talking about Kamala Harris, all right? Check this out.
I was in California. She lacked professional competence, and she worked on it by hiking up her hemline when she needed influence rather than researching. I was out in California for 15 years doing my show when she was at her peak, and she had a reputation amongst the trial lawyers of being lazy. She just hike her skirt up and try to flirt, and she wasn't that good in the courtroom, if not pretty bad in the courtroom. So I'm not surprised at what she does. She's 60 years old, and I think listening to her word salad and the way she talks, I think she's got early onset dementia and also some problems with menopausal complications. That's that, you see, today is going to be tomorrow. So since it's going to be tomorrow, today we have tomorrow, which is why we are now. Like, what did you say? They have something in mind, but they cannot cognate getting all the way through it, which is why she's famous for this word salad garbage, and she doesn't make a bit of sense. I think since she's only 60, she's actually on a worse track than Biden was. Biden is 20-some years older than her, and he has been senile for a long time. Now, about 5 or 6 years ago, when did they start ramping up to do this? 2019. Okay, I was saying Biden has been a failure his whole adult career, a second-rate, third-string player. He's in the game, so he wants to make a name for himself. I considered him for years poor trailer park, urban trailer park trash. And he's a crook. He's a third stringer. Now, what I said he was going to do is he probably wants to claim fame for being the first person to see to it that a woman got to be president. And what I predicted, I'm slightly wrong on it, was that he was going to get in, try to get elected, and if he got one term, try to get elected for a second one. And then halfway through his term, when he had served 2 years, to retire or resign in her favor. So under the 22nd Amendment, what happens is she can serve for the final 2 years for somebody and then be elected twice more. So that woman would be able to serve 10 years, second only to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who got elected to 4 terms before they put the amendment in place so you couldn't. Now, that said, I think, and my major at UCLA was political science, my analysis is they picked the weakest somebody they could as a figurehead, somebody who had some apparent minority status, which she does not. And what goes on is that you get her, everybody that is everybody would be afraid to go against her because of what she can pass herself off as. And then you get somebody that's easy to control because she's lazy, because she is becoming incoherent, and because she's always tried to do the casting couch to get where she wants. Now, the problem is that'll get somebody to a certain level quickly. But you can't get past that level if you don't have competence and talent. So my thing about it is if I'm crude about it, in this city years ago, I used to represent a whole bunch of pimps and hoes, and I know a hoe when I see one. And I say this, I don't care, women, you do what you want to do if you want to have recreational sex, but when you do the casting couch or anything else for professional purposes to get paid or advance, you a hoe. And she's old hoe. And the problem is what is she supposed to do? Somebody, one of her sycophant slaves comes up and unwraps her in a carpet naked at Putin's feet, and he says, oh yeah, I'm Julius Caesar. He said, no, hoe. I got better stuff here already. Plus, I don't want you anyway, you old woman. Get on up, you know. Or Xi Jinping, is he supposed to be impressed? She's doing word salad. Well, we're here today because China and the U.S. are here today, and that's why we have to agree on what we're doing here today. Like, fool, what did you just say? You know, did you say anything? And I've never seen such a salacious mess as I've seen out of her. I think of One West Bank. I had some pretty good properties out in California at one point in time. And I know I had 3 neighbors who had good properties. It was in a place called Ojai, California. And they got caught up about 15, 16 years ago, like a lot of people did, in that mortgage bundling scam stuff that was going on. And there was a bank called One West Bank responsible for it, which was owned by George Soros. The Mnuchin that you have out of the Obama administration was Mnuchin, who was the CEO of One West Bank. Well, there were approximately 1,200 counts of indictments returned against Mnuchin and One West Bank in various counties in California. Well, Mnuchin and Soros financed and arranged and sponsored Kamala to run for Attorney General of California. They got her elected. She got in, and using the authority she had, she promptly consolidated all 5,200 counts and dismissed them. And a couple of weeks later, Soros sold One West Bank for $4.2 billion. So after that, they got together and got her finance and got everything organized and made the connections for her, and she got elected to U.S. Senator. Willie Brown made the initial contacts and arrangements so she could get elected as district attorney for San Francisco. She didn't do a very good job. She had a reputation for giving out the stiffest sentences in the United States of America for simple possession of marijuana in San Francisco, for God's sakes. But it was only to young black men. She's not a parent, never had any children, but she went off on this campaign to lock parents up, some of whom actually were shown to have dropped their children off at the school, but they played hooky, so she was putting them in jail.